Alright, hello everyone. Today I have a very special guest, Brian David Marshall. Most people probably know, but Brian is known for being a Magic commentator or just part of the Magic coverage for a very long time. And you were also one of the first people who held the first tournaments, I think. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I started running tournaments in November of 1994. Mm-hmm. There had been a couple of other tournaments that people had run in New York, but they were very much, we're going to run a tournament, and then when the tournament's over, everyone's going to go home, and someone will win a prize, and, that's it. Where we ran a tournament in 94, which was, we're going to give away a big prize, but we're also going to run side events, and we had Melissa Benson and, Jeff Menges and a bunch of other different artists from the early days of Magic the Gathering there. And, we did a lot of different stuff to keep people there the entire day. And really, in a lot of ways, set the standard for what would become Grand Prix. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually watched a YouTube video, and it was exactly describing that. I think it's awesome. Were you one of the first people who held tournaments like this? Or I don't know, how did it all happen? Why did you decide to do that and stuff?
So I was working for a chain of comic book stores when I started playing Magic, which was somewhere in early 1994. Was playing with my friends who were in my board game group, right? These people I just grew up playing, all these different board games with. And, we heard about Magic, or I heard about Magic because people kept asking me for it because nobody could find it. It was in between the release of Beta and Unlimited. Mm-hmm. And it was sold out everywhere. And people were coming into the store and asking for it. So eventually we found it at the Complete Strategist, which is this game store that's close to 50 years old in New York, and all bought some unlimited starter decks and some booster packs and started playing for ante. Right, playing with each other and the way you used to play.
Can you explain what ante is? Because a lot of people watching probably don't know what it is. So
this is how you were supposed to play Magic back then. There are cards in Magic's history that specifically reference ante. You think about something like Jeweled Bird or Contract from Below, are cards that all reference ante. And it was, you would sit down against your opponent, you would cut their deck, and whatever card you cut to, they were putting that card on the line. And they would cut your deck, and whatever card they cut to, you were putting that on the line. And people played this way, and you would just gain those cards.
That's crazy.
This was part of tournament Magic, too. So in the early days of Limited, people played for ante, and you didn't get to add extra lands to your deck back then.
Oh.
So if you opened a sealed deck that had 5 mountains, you had 5 mountains to work with, no matter how many good red cards you had. And if someone cut to one of your mountains and you had to ante up your mountain, that was worse than anteing up your most valuable rare in the deck. So
that's crazy.
It was a crazy. It did not last very long. Mm-hmm. The last time I can remember that being a part of the game really was around Ice Age, which is the last of the ante cards I think are printed. Amulet of Quaz, I think, is Ice Age, right? I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you with the ante thing, but you were
No, that was great. I'm always amazed by. So we were playing for ante, and we were doing that, and I think other than 2 of us, most of my friends sort of fell away from. They realized what they were in for with the game, that it was going to be. Okay, I just bought some Arabians packs. I just bought a box of Legends. I did this. Not everyone was willing to make that nuclear escalation commitment to Magic, to their collections. And some of them fell off of it. And so started looking for other people to play with and to find out. And eventually connected with someone who talked about Magic on the internet. What? He was very early internet adopter in 1994. Was on the Usenet groups for Magic, knew all the rules for Magic, and became our resident judge at the store that I worked at, which was a comic store. And so we would talk about these people were now starting to get to the idea of running tournaments. There was a store out in Queens that would run an event, a comic book store that would run a Magic tournament once a week. There was someone who ran a big Magic tournament out on Staten Island, who was someone I knew. And there had been a tournament in the South Street Seaport of Manhattan, if I remember. Those were like the extent of what was going on. But again, they were all like these one-off events. And I was coming from a background of working in public relations and working in marketing for this chain of comic book stores, where this is when all the comics were like these big events. The death of Superman, the launch of Image Comics, this artist taking over this book. And so we would do these huge convention-like signings at the store. And we started and basically just kind of applied all of that knowledge together to create, to say, well, what if we created more than a tournament? What if we created an event where people can come and really just, we understood that you wanted to play a lot of Magic when you were playing Magic. You didn't want to just come and play one tournament, get knocked out,
yeah, that makes sense,
and go home. So, so that was kind of what led to that event. We had no idea what we were doing. I didn't even understand how single elimination fully worked when we started it. Right, like it was like, okay, someone said, "Oh, I played a lot of chess tournaments. I'm curious what you're doing to get down to a power of 2." I'm going to look that up right now. I'm going to call a friend of mine who plays chess and figure it out. We figured out how to give buys, before the first round, right? And it was crazy. We had no idea what we were doing, but people had a blast. People had a great time. We actually, if you watch that video, we actually did video footage.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of it, right?
Yeah, we recorded a lot of footage from that event. It was super fun. We did another tournament in the start of the next year for a set of Legends, I think, or maybe a box of Legends, and we had almost 1,000 people show up, which was pretty crazy because the hotel space that we rented could accommodate maybe 400. Yeah. So and so it took off from there, and later on that year, it became apparent to me that people just were not satisfied with one Magic event a month. And I wasn't satisfied, right? Like these were, I'm starting to make my friends in the Magic community, right? This is the beginning of that. And you're like, oh, I just want to spend more time with these people. And so the idea of neutral ground came out of that, which was, when you think of a game store now, you think of a tournament center, you think of a store that has a lot of space and tables and chairs and places to play games, but that didn't exist in '95. And we invented that. We created the term tournament center, actually, as a way to describe what we were doing. And it was like a 5,000 square foot space in Manhattan, not on the ground floor, because we knew that people who were playing Magic were going to come to us. We didn't need them to walk by and see it, right? Where they were going to figure it out. And
was it cheaper that way?
Oh, way cheaper. We never could have afforded, even in the worst parts of Manhattan at that point, could not have afforded that type of space.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it was a big success, and we really cultivated a community of players in New York that include, Stephen O'Mahony Schwartz and John Finkel and Zvi Moshowitz and all the Jersey guys that you think about, Ostap Lebedovich and Patrick Sullivan and Eugene Harvey and this just generations of great Magic talent came through the store over the years. It was awesome.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were part of the commentating team since the beginning, I think. Was maybe the reason why you got into it, like the fact that you basically created one of the first tournament centers, or was it just an accident, or how did it happen?
So I was at the first Pro Tour, but I worked as a judge, not doing commentary. I played in a couple Pro Tours. I played, I think, in the second Pro Tour Los Angeles, and played in a handful of team events, both Pro Tour New Yorks, both Pro Tour Bostons. And had spent a little bit of time, a lot of time actually dedicated to the store, and didn't travel to so there's a window of time from 97 to 99 where I didn't go to a lot of Pro Tours and wasn't around the Pro Tour very much. Very involved in Magic, but very involved in the day-to-day running of my store. Somewhere around 2003, when I sold the store, 2002, I got involved in doing coverage. And it was because I had been at multiple Pro Tours and not done well. And someone would be like, hey, you write articles for Sideboard Magazine, or you've done this, you're a professional writer. Why don't you help us do some coverage of the top 8 here? And so I'd been at a couple of events where I bombed out and ended up doing top 8 coverage. And then with Pro Tour Yokohama, I think was my first full-time event. I got on the coverage team, or it may have been the Pro Tour Chicago before that, and was doing text coverage and never looked back. Did it straight, pretty much every single event except 2 where I was sick from 2002, 2003, right through the beginning of 2019 when I retired.
Did you ever like regret the fact that you were part of the coverage and you cannot really play and like prove that you also have it?
No, so you have a pretty good idea of the disparity between your skill level when you get to be around John Finkel. I played a lot of Magic against John Finkel, and I am very aware of the skill gap. Or Stephen O'Mahony Schwartz or Zvi Moshowitz, or I love Magic. I would have loved to have played. I'm about 10 years older than that whole group of people. I would have loved to have found Magic when I was 13 and not when I was 23. Funny, when I was 13 and just had that ability to just completely
merge into it.
Just completely dedicate my life to it. Had that ability to remember every single number, and in when I was 13, if you named a baseball player, I could tell you all their stats from any given year from the back of their baseball card, right? I could tell you every issue of every comic, every creative team, right? That kind of like comprehensive database that you assemble for Magic. I wasted it on other things like baseball cards and comic books, and so I would have loved to, but I love playing Magic, but I enjoy Magic more when I'm playing it socially than when I'm playing it competitively. I did win some money. I've won some money playing in Grand Prix. I won $1,100 with a top 16 finish at Pro Tour New York in 2001, playing in Madison Square Garden.
That's pretty good.
Which I was like, this is pretty good. This is a great career highlight, right? Not everyone who plays Magic is going to have the kind of experiences you've had playing Magic, or the kind of experiences that even players who've had more success than you have had, right? Like that's just, everyone has different levels of success with it. I had a friend who's not with us anymore. He passed away, and his lifelong dream was to qualify for the Pro Tour, right? That was what he wanted to do. He didn't care about if he made D2. He didn't care if he won money. He didn't care if he went 04, right? Or 08. He would have played every round, right?
He just wanted to show up,
Yeah, he was just so excited to say, I qualified for the Pro Tour, right? And so I think we all find different level. I found a level of success that I'm pretty happy with. But the thing that I enjoy most about Magic is the social aspects of it. I love talking about it. I love meeting the people who are involved in it. I love encouraging people to take new leaps into new areas with it, right? I love getting people onto the coverage team over the years. I love getting people jobs in the game design space. I find it just to be such an amazingly rich community of incredibly smart people who sometimes need a little nudge in the right direction. And that's really been where I found a tremendous amount of personal success in the game.
That's awesome. During the coverage, a lot of the time you're like referred to as a Pro Tour historian, and you also mentioned the fact that you could, at like 13, you could like remember all the stats from the baseball cards and stuff like that. So I wanted to just like a little bit ask about that, because anytime someone just said a name, you like immediately said like 3 Pro Tour top 8s win here or whatever. So I just wanted to ask if you like just remember all of it, or do you like have to prepare for that kind of a stuff, or what is going on there?
It's a little of both. I have a pretty good memory still somehow, and do remember a lot, and the things that I'm excited about. If you certainly if you like put me on the spot and said, tell me how many top 8s this person has, I might not be able to do it. But if I'm just talking about someone, it's gonna.
Oh, I see.
When I'm talking, a lot of times that stuff will just come up to the top. But yeah, the historian job was largely. It's a weird name for the title, because I would say that I'm not as detail oriented about people's careers as some people who really have made a side hobby out of just like documenting like the ELO project, or people who really just dug into every little detail and every little streak. For me, the historian title was really about the Hall of Fame, and it came with my role curating the Hall of Fame and overseeing that the induction ceremonies, basically every single Hall of Fame ceremony from 2005 in Yokohama to 2000, was it in 2019 in Richmond?
I think so.
Yeah, when Reed got inducted, I got to. So I put together every aspect of those ceremonies, right? I did the interviews with the people. I dug through the old photographs to find pictures of all these people playing Magic. I, put together, their deck lists and reviewed their careers, which is why I know a lot of details about people also, just because I'm constantly reviewing people's Hall of Fame eligibility and thinking about those numbers. So a lot of that stuff is just rattling around in my head at any time. So
you're basically around the Pro Tour since the beginning till the end. I basically got into it. I mean, it's pretty. I think I saw the first coverage that I saw was the Pro Tour that Nassif won against LSV.
Such a great Pro Tour.
Yeah. But during that time there already was like information on the internet and stuff like that. So I just wanted to ask about like the difference between like back in the day and now. Like was it like a huge difference? Was there like a different vibe at the Pro Tours? Like if you can just compare the Pro Tour now and how it was back in the day.
Totally different ecosystem of information. Totally different vibe in terms of the energy. I mean, there's a lot going on. So one of the things that's crazy in the early days of Magic, people didn't publish deck lists, right? Like people thought they could keep their deck list secret. People like there weren't there wasn't a mandate that like if you play in this event we're going to publish your deck list, or we have the right to publish your deck list. So things were much more secretive. Like you really had to do research to find stuff out. You had to be a little more connected to figure out what decks were what there were. It was very strange, and also the information was not as immediate. Excuse me. So like at a Grand Prix, right, within 5 minutes of the Grand Prix being concluded, who won, what decks were played, all this stuff. Back then, you relied on a magazine coming out. Maybe a month later, and it would have like the results of last month's Grand Prix. And yes, and that information was also available online, but really, you didn't have that, constant integration into all your different social media platforms, because those didn't exist yet, right? So if you knew to go to the Wizards website and try to find that coverage and follow it, you could do that. But if not, you were, you're really relying on, your copy of Sideboard magazine showing up at your gaming store, first week of the month.
Did those magazines like were printed only in States, or was it in other countries as well?
So they were printed in the States. I know that for sure. There was a magazine called European Sideboard.
I see. Never heard of
it. Which I still need copies of, and for my archives. I don't have all the copies of European Sideboard, and that would deal with like the Euro players. Mostly they were articles about Ralph Levy, right?
Yeah.
But they would talk about the European Championship. Back then there were do you know about the Continental Championships?
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was they would certainly do European sideboard for the Euro events.
Yeah, basically the reason why I was asking the question, because you said that there were like no deck lists online, so obviously if you have magazines in States, those players probably had like a huge advantage over the people who are from countries where you didn't have any magazines. So like
yeah, I that is absolutely true, right? I mean, I think when you watch how Magic progresses around the world, it largely follows the localization of information, right? And it's pretty amazing to me when players were able to overcome that information disadvantage. You think about Carlos Ramau, succeeding at the World Championship, or you think about Jakob Schlemmer at Worlds.
It's actually Schlemmer.
Schlemmer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, he's from Czech Republic and he won World Championship like 25 years
1997.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Really the first great Czech player, right? Do you know if he still plays? He
sometimes goes to like pre-releases, but we are not from the same era, so like we never really actually talked that much, so I don't really know him that well.
Okay. That's cool though that he still plays. I love that, right? That's amazing. So it's always amazing to me when those players were able to sort of add this extra layer of difficulty to what they did. But again, it was pretty quick, right? By the late 90s, you had the Magic Dojo, which everybody just used. I mean, I remember hearing stories about Ataru Ishida, who's since passed away, great Japanese Magic player, who basically would play Magic with an English to Japanese dictionary.
Wow.
Right? That was he started playing the game when like Revised was out. There was no Japanese edition of the game yet. And he would just like play the game with a dictionary to translate everything. So it's a pretty and he had success very early, right? I think he ends up having a top 30. I want to say a top 32 finish at Pro Tour Mines in like '97.
No idea.
And, yeah. But that's the question was more for myself. But he, and that's amazing to me, right? To have that success, and it's not like there were, the Japanese cards were just maybe starting to come out right around then. So, and certainly didn't have access to them for his sealed pool or for his drafts or anything like that. So, but yeah, it was a totally different vibe, and there was a total different energy, right? Like, copying decks was frowned upon. Right, it was called net. It was called net decking.
Oh, it had like a bad vibe around it.
Yeah. It was like, it was really just considered. People talk about that idea of Magic the way Richard Garfield intended it to be played. Right, we've all heard that euphemism or that meme, and but people took that pretty seriously back then. Right, they felt like their deck was very much an extension of their personality, of their identity. Right, there was. I mean, I still remember there was a guy in New York in '94 who basically invented, playing with Mishra's Factories and Nevernal's discs.
Oh. So
he would blow up the board, animate his Mishras, and attack. He invented that. That was his deck. Right. John Finkel had the balance deck, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so when you copied a deck, it felt pretty personal, and we didn't have the same info again because decks weren't shared, because they weren't published, because it wasn't easy to just go online and say, hey, I really want to play a red deck. Let me look, right? It felt like more of a violation for someone to like almost be like at the store over your shoulder, right? Writing down cards. I see. Yeah, Goblin Sledder, got it. It was a crazy, weird vibe to that, and people would get really mad. In fact, if you watch, so I did a video about that first tournament I ran with Marshall Sutcliffe, where he and I, like, basically the way he would do the rewind videos, but we just talked through this video footage I had from my first tournament. And at the end of the tournament, we have an interview with the winner of the tournament, which is kind of crazy that we somehow had the foresight to have that. And he talks about how the person he was playing in the finals copied his deck. Right? He's like, I played him at some store last week, and he copied my deck, and he almost is ready to start crying because, you know, not only did he have to beat this guy, but he had to beat this guy who was playing his deck, and he felt so awful about the whole thing. It's a pretty amazing, you know, piece of content when you think about how fast decks proliferate now, and how, you know, you sit down to play a match now, and someone's like, oh, Gigantha the Wellspring. Oh, okay, they're playing the Temur Engine deck. I got it. All right, you know, like everyone's just playing the same 25 decks in any given format, right? Yeah. But back then, I mean, decks were much more personal. People didn't max out 4 copies of cards all the time. You know, it was.
Oh, was that a thing? How, like, did a deck just like play like 2-offs and 3-offs or whatever, or?
Oh yeah, quite often.
Oh.
Quite often, and like people were scared of cards. So if you look at the Necropotence decks from Pro Tour 1, Necropotence was a card nobody played before Pro Tour 1. Mm-hmm. It was, and there were a handful of players who brought Necropotence decks to the tournament. It did top 8 of the seniors event, but the juniors event, that was also a difference. The Pro Tour used to be split into 2 fields.
Yeah. And
there was everyone over 18 and everyone under 18, and the under 18 crowd played for scholarship money. The under 18 crowd, by the way, at first Pro Tour included Brian Kibler, Bob Marr, John Finkel, Steve O'Mahony Schwartz.
Yeah, I actually talked to Ben Rubin, and he said that the junior one might have been like more tough because of that.
Yeah, it was insane. And the Necro decks were crazy. Like they would have 3 Necropotences, or they would have 2 Demonic Consultations, and it took a PTQ season, which is where the first time we really see people starting to publish decks and share information on the Magic Dojo and other places, that you start to see the decks get refined over a period of time. And people going, no, of course we play 4 Rituals, 4 Hymns, 4 Necropotents, and 4 Demonic Consultations. Obviously we do that, right? Yeah. But that wasn't how it started, right? People would find their ratio of cards, and they wanted to get more cards in, right? The knowledge about the game, the theory about the game was really underdeveloped still at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you actually resigned from the coverage team. I think maybe 2 years ago. I actually met you on the airport when you were leaving the last Pro Tour. So
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, we were hanging out.
So that's kind of funny. And I think you told me it was because you wanted to move into game development or something like that.
I had taken a job as the creative director for a new game company, working with Zvi Moshowitz, actually, mm-hmm. Who I've mentioned is someone I've known through the New York Magic scene, and have been doing that work for the last 2 years, and the company's changed a little bit, but actually about to launch our game this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're launching a digital collectible card game built on the blockchain, plus a bunch of other really cool gaming and comic-related projects that I've been working on for the last 2 years. It's really exciting.
Is it fun? Are you not regretting the fact that you're not part of the Pro Tour anymore?
So I love being around that crowd. I love hanging out with the coverage team. And it's funny, I ended up, because of COVID, doing a fair amount of Magic coverage this past year.
Oh,
actually,
I
surprisingly covered a couple of events because I didn't have to. I could do it on a Saturday and didn't have to go start traveling on Wednesday night. Take 2 days off from work. Take a day off from work when I get back. I was able to do a couple of events, and it was a lot of fun. But honestly, there's so many talented people. My job doing coverage is going to be impaired by my having to do other work during the week, and my work during the week is going to be impaired by me having to do coverage.
That makes
sense. I really want to focus on the one thing, and then go to a Magic event. Say, hey, I'm taking a week off from work, or I'm taking some, and go and just hang out with my friends, right? I don't even want to. It's so funny when this whole COVID thing ends here. at some point in
Hopefully.
the determinate future, right? Yeah, hopefully. I don't even want to go to a Magic event. I want to just message everybody and say, we're going to this hotel. Book a room. We'll meet in the lobby, and we're just going to hang out all weekend. I don't even want to play the Magic tournament. I just want all the hangout part of the Magic tournament, and the Magic. And we'll play some Commander, draft in the lobby, or do whatever, right? Because that's what we do. But ultimately, I just want to see everybody and hang out with everybody and have a drink and hug my friends and go, that guy over there, I hate him, right? Let's tell stories about him, and just have that experience of just being surrounded by people who share this common passion, right? Mm-hmm. So that's so yes, I miss being part of the coverage team, but fortunately the coverage team it became very much like a family to me over the years, and there were people who were already part of that family who weren't doing coverage anymore, and there's people who are part of that family who are still doing coverage, and I'll hang out with them. We do Zoom calls. We constantly have Marshall or Maria or Rich or Tim Willoughby or somebody on my phone in a text chain, or so I'm still very much around those people all the time, and that's the part I would miss if suddenly I was cut off from interacting with those people, and I would be super sad. But
that makes sense. Yeah,
I would rather open up more spots for people to come in and do that job. And like, I've enjoyed watching Magic coverage this year. That's something I've never really gotten to do that. Right? I've gotten to do it twice when I was sick and missed an event, and then I was just bitter and angry that I wasn't there.
Did you never watch like your own coverage, or like when you were covering it, were you like not watching after that?
No, I generally don't go back and listen to my podcasts, watch my interviews, or watch any old coverage. I hate the sound of my own voice.
I think it's pretty good. You don't have to worry about it.
But yeah, so yeah, no, it's been really cool to watch people doing their job and doing it super well. I thought the last Pro Tour, whatever that was called.
Yeah, right? No one knows.
Yeah, was it Zendikar Rising Championship?
Yeah.
Was fantastic. I thought everybody did just an amazing job up and down the line. The commentary was great. I think Paul Cheon and Marshall Sutcliffe are the gold standard for a booth, but everybody, all the different permutations of the booth were fantastic, and the news desk has just really become something great. And I loved it. I was like, this is great. I just get to watch Magic all weekend. How exciting! So.
All right, I think I've asked everything I wanted to ask. Or maybe there's still something that you want to say. I don't want to like cut it without saying that, but if you're okay, then.
No, I mean, I would just say the one thing is, to you and to everyone I know who might be listening, I hope I get to see you this year.
I hope so as well.
I hope we get to hang out somewhere, play some Magic, have some good drinks, eat some good food, and if you are taking care of yourself, staying safe, wearing a mask, doing all those things, I appreciate you. And if you don't do those things, I don't appreciate you. And so that's about it for me.
All right, thank you very much. If you guys like the video, please click on the like and subscribe button. Thanks for your time, and see you. Bye-bye.